Welcome to another Walking the Land with a Regenerative Farmer, where we walk the land with a farmer and explore regeneration. Please let us know what you think. Today we walk with Felipe Pasini and we walk the Amadeco farm Masseria in Depressa, Salento, Puglia in southern Italy. A syntropic agroforestry farm which really is operating at the cutting edge of agroforestry in Italy and the rest of Europe. Enjoy. Very warm welcome to the second episode, depending when you listen to this obviously, of Walking the Land with the Regenerative Farmer. And today we're in southern Italy. We're going to paint the context a bit. We're going to make it as visual as possible. You might be able to see this. We might put some imagery as well, but this is primarily an audio version. So I want you to take a cup of tea or go out for a walk or whatever, go into meditation or you listen to this and try to make it in your head as visual as possible, because that's what we try to do as well. It's a beautiful day. It seems the first day of spring, which is ridiculously early, the middle of February, and there might be some background noise of birds, some cars, some pruning, maybe because Felipe obviously has scissors and a small saw in his hand. So that will be some of the noises that will accompany us in this trip. So thank you first of all for having us here, Felipe, having us back here. This is a recurring theme in our journeys, in our trips through the continent. Where are we when people come in here? They come from somewhere, so they understand. But when imagine people just dropped here out of nothing, where would you tell them we are? And then we'll start our visual walk.
Okay, first of all, thank you for this another invitation, and it's very nice to have you back and to have you and your family. It's always a pleasure to be together with you all, like 3 consecutive winters, feeling like spring, as you said. Okay, we are here at the entrance of this beautiful masseria, which is this very traditional way of organizing the land in southern Italy. What we can see here is already like the vision that really spot my attention when I first came and made me think that this place is wonderful for trying different designs, because although it is a 10-hectare, 9 point something, almost a 10-hectare land, it has almost like different rooms, different spaces that is all divided by this technique of dry walls. These traditional techniques where old farmers, they just took rocks out of the land because it's very rocky soil, and they build these beautiful walls without using any cement, just piling them up.
Yeah, so imagine around us there are a lot of pretty straight walls actually, of 1.20 meters high maybe, made of rocks removed from the field. And so the entranceway is like that, and a lot of the fields are sort of squarish with these walls. You can easily look over them, you can see beyond, but they definitely provide a very physical barrier or boundary between the different fields.
Yes,
do you remember the first time you came on this property? Like the first time you drove on this property or you walked on it?
If I remember, yes.
What was your feeling? Is it immediately I felt there was a lot of potential?
Yes, for not only the potential that I already knew about this place, because it's a challenging place where agriculture is kind of, I would say, dead or difficult at least, because of climate conditions, degradation, and soil degradation, and water scarcity, and the water that comes from the boreholes are salty, are salinized. Since 2009, the landscape became quite difficult because of the Xylella fastidiosa and the syndrome of the olives. And so, yes, I remember it's a place full of potential, but a good surprise was not only to meet this scenario, which is nice and challenging for us, but also this organization of this farm, because it's not, as we said, it's not a 9-hectare straight lane of 9 hectares that we have to divide. It is, we can see almost like a frame for each area that we can try and discuss ideas and designs and see how they integrate with the local and traditional ways of organizing a space. We want to not only respect but pay a tribute to the tradition, which is absolutely beautiful, that exists here, and also to propose new ways or new readings of these spaces and propose a new aesthetics as well. I find not our areas, and of course I'm suspicious to say, but I find they're not only like a regenerative, they're not only like this agroforestry that improves the soil, that brings diversity, but they're also very beautiful. And I think aesthetically, if we think about multifunctional landscapes and include, how you call this? It's coming paisagismo.
Peasantry? No. The landscape view, that's not a word, but how the landscape looks?
Yes, I mean, it's a kind of almost a gardening in a way, because it's really also...
Which is a view that's not being used, or at least never, or very rarely spoken, I think, outside certain circles in agriculture. Like, it's like view and aesthetics and how it looks and feels, and it should be nice and beautiful to look at, is not something you see regularly. And just as a bit of background, I will definitely link them. I'm pointing below, but nobody sees that. We'll link them below. We've recorded the deep dive with you 2 years ago on syntropic agroforestry or syntropic agriculture. And we've had the pleasure to interview your partner in crime and partner in life, Diana, in the field actually, which we filmed, which I'll also link below, so you can learn a lot more there of the background, and we'll touch upon a lot of those pieces here as well, but in a way less structured way. So that is good as a background if you want to listen to that, or just stay with us and you will go on a trip as well. But the aesthetics here, it's spectacular compared to most other things you can see. I will also link your Instagram account here, where you with the whole team actually are capturing this beauty in an absolutely stunning way and getting people out of their preconceived notions of what trees could be or what trees in a landscape could look like, and capturing that with all the new technology is just breathtaking. So I will make sure people can follow that from far. If you're in a city somewhere, if you're looking at mostly concrete, get your daily shot of nature through these kind of accounts. So we're looking here on the left. I mean, we can start walking actually, because we're on the entry point. There's the house, which we're not going to pay too much attention to. Actually, we've recorded another episode there as well with one of the owners of this place and one of the starters, Jan Gisbert, who also talked a lot about his journey, which eventually led to Puglia. But then on the left here, I think it's the second field. We'll get to the first one later, which we also covered with the camera, but this is the second.
Well, actually, this one is the third
technically, the first
field, although it's closer, but really finished organizing sooner, actually last spring. So it's less than 1 year.
Wow.
And this year will explode, I hope. And
so what are we looking at in terms of, what should we imagine if we're listening to this?
Okay, here the goal of this place was to propose a design for more intense vegetable production, but adapted to this place. You don't have to imagine like a lot of vegetable beds, because it's not like that. We have here one tree line every 5.2 meters, and the tree line is composed by one fruit tree every 4 meters. Between these fruit trees, we have an emergent tree that could be poplars, eucalypt, making the emergent layers.
Fast-growing, super.
Yes, those that are we'll prune, we'll control shades with these plants. And then in the lower layer, we have all the fantastic aromatics that we have here in the Mediterranean. Okay, I will describe what I see. We're seeing the sage. We plant a lot of carciofi, as well artichokes and rosemaries. And of course, we have other trees that will fill this median layer, which are growing like pistachio lentiscos. We have oleander as well, because it's a very fast-growing rustic, and we can prune very easily. It's good for pruning. And we have our triplex halimus, which is here is called herba sale. It desalinizes the soil, grows. It became one of our fastest growing plants, allies that we use for pruning a lot. So it becomes a very spread out bush covering all the soil. We have, more sage. We have Buddleia. It's a plant that we tested from the first year, and it's showing a fantastic capacity to tend the dry season, growing all the time, growing.
Because that's what you're looking for here, right?
Like yes, we want biomass production.
Green biomass production cover, especially, not in February, etc., but especially in those extremely hot, dry.
And that can stand like a little water or almost no water.
Because this is slightly irrigated, I think.
It's a kind of a system that we try to educate our plants to depend almost with no water, and in the future with no water. So the ideal is, as we see already in the Giardino, we start with something, but we try to train them not to depend on water. And all the plants here are capable of doing that. If it was not for the fruit trees, that all of the fruit trees we have here in this space, and there are almost 90 fruit trees, and this a little bit over 2,000 square meters. They come from nurseries, so we can expect them to survive in harsh conditions.
Because they've been pampered a bit too much.
And then we give some water in the beginning. And so continuing, we have the pistachio lentiscos, more artichokes. We have Cineraria maritima, which is also a very fast-growing bush. More rosemaries, and we also, let me see if I find some here. More lentiscos, but we are adding the future as well. So we'll find some oak trees that we are planting to be the trees of the future. For example, the eucalypt and even the poplar. They can stay here for long, but as long as we have like the climax species that belong to this landscape, like the oak trees, will slowly in succession, because it is one of the pillars of this approach. They will...
Took us 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and we talk about succession, which is, let's no, but I'm making half a joke, but actually very fundamental piece here, because people would go like, oh, eucalyptus, and but everything here has a role, a plan, and at some point it's an end, and that's fine as well, or it serves for the next phase, and that's
absolutely
planned and pruned for, and that's okay. Like that's scheduled into the idea, the design, and the system to kickstart. Because where we're walking now, we're walking on wood logs actually in between the field, which is not only anti-compaction but also a great fertilizer. Mm-hmm. What was this field before you started?
Well, this actually was not. Of course, it's everything was difficult and poor. Poor for our agriculture, but this was, I guess, the previous owners. They did some kind of a vegetable garden here, and so it was not the worst place, because at least it didn't have like tractors passing every year and plowing happening constantly. But still, average of a place. There was nothing. Absolutely nothing, just small herbs that grow in here, and a dominance of this calendula, which is, we love the calendula, but is also an indicator of a soil that it still lacks like nutrients and capacity to hold more demanding species. And one thing that is interesting, because sometimes it's more accurate to describe this type of system not in hectares but in linear meters, because here we are in a a little over 2,500 meters area, but we have almost 1 kilometer of lines, because
it's the lines that count in terms of production and biomass and work.
Because they are very close together. So here is for walking. That's why we said it. This suits like a small to medium farmer that doesn't have a lot of land and wants to maximize and optimize production and diversity. I mean, of course, we intensify all the layers here, and we kind of put a condensed design. So between these 5.2 meters, we have 3 beds, 3 vegetable beds, and they are divided by the wood logs that you were mentioning that we laid on the ground, because we don't want to create islands of fertility. I mean, the paths where we walk, they shouldn't be like roads of compaction that we come even with a wheelbarrow or walking. Instead, we take a lot of work. I mean, it is a lot of work to do that, but we place wood logs that for trees that we pruned here, even the olives that were cut down. And so they decompose in the future. I mean, we see, if we can raise some, we see some fungi already being...
And that's 1 year, right?
Yeah, I mean,
you notice the difference here.
mycorrhiza.
Like we walk here, and it's sort of very uneven. I'm not saying uncomfortable, but you have to pay attention when you walk. When you go to the older field, the Giardino, basically it's flat. It's been absorbed.
It's really already being decomposed. Also, since we planted a lot of perennial plants, I mean, the roots keep growing, and the roots keep growing. So we want these roots to communicate under these logs. I mean, they travel under this log, and they participate with the microorganisms that they bring, that grow together with the roots, to participate in the decomposition of this organic matter. And so it is a lot of work at the beginning. It is like an investment of time. Not too much, but it is an investment. But the benefits are absolutely worth. So we are happy for doing this. And okay, continuing here. Yes, I said the Baudelaire, which is an amazing, and it's now after the 3rd year, I mean, using this plant, we see it fills the median, like a low to medium layer of this fast-growing Consortia very well, which makes us really happy.
What's the biggest surprise in terms of plants that because when we talked 2 years ago, obviously you were very much at the beginning. I think a bit was planted, but you came on this land 2 years and a few months ago, so it was very early. Now you've had a few seasons, a few years, let's say, in your pocket. And what has been the great surprise in terms of plants to work with as your allies in regenerating these pieces of land?
Well, yeah, although we've been working in the Mediterranean for, a little bit more than 5 years now, each place has a particularity. I mean, we use the aromatics, we use some similar trees, but they behave differently depending where we are. And here, for example, compared to the place where we lived in Portugal and then later Spain with our friends from La Loma Viva, here is, although the summer is very hot, here we have much colder winters, and we have frosts. Some plants we can't even plant in fall as we hope. We are trying to anticipate the planting season, so say they can build some muscles to stand the frost. We are doing some trials like that, but we are learning that we have our, I wouldn't say favorites, but some that we know we can't live without. Yes, I mean, for example, the salvia here, you see that they really, in this first year, they dominate everywhere because...
The sage is huge, yeah. Huge leaves, huge growth.
Yeah, first year, they don't complain about frosts. They really don't care about it. And they keep growing. They are fantastic for pruning. That's why we are integrating them with our vegetable production, which I will speak about in a minute, our vegetable beds. But anyway, they are the ones that provide a lot of biomass in the first year. The rosemary, for example, that normally grows faster in other places, here they're a little bit slower in the first and second year, and then they explode. They make a good pair, because now we are seeing our like an oak tree, a roverella, like that is a very traditional here. That is, we planted very close together to a poplar, and so this poplar will grow, and the roverella, which is a fast growing, it will follow, and let's see in how many years it will take, it will eventually replace the poplar. Yeah, so this is the tree line that we are still walking, and on my left we have like a vegetable bed we really tried something new here and something a little bit different from what people would expect, because we have an 80 centimeter bed that we can really mechanize the preparation. Our decision was to make a perennial line of aromatics in the center. So we have sage, we have cineraria, we have oregano, and we have santolina, and plus rosemary. So we have these plants that they're making a line of perennial aromatics, and on the sides of this line of perennial aromatics we have just like 2 lines of vegetables, I mean one each side. So our idea here is not to have every time that we want to replace our vegetables to come with a machine and even plow this 80 centimeters, but we only work the line that we are gonna replant them, and we prune aromatics so they will produce the biomass, they will produce the mulch for our vegetables, and as our aromatics regrow, I mean, they will also send a signal of or hormones and exudates of new growth for these plants. I mean, for our
basically we'll get the full bed into new growth.
Yes, I mean,
so you plant and prune at the same time.
Exactly. And this spring, we'll do even more because I mean, since we didn't have a lot of biomass at the beginning, a lot of mulch, so we brought this mulch from outside. So we have a layer of wood chips plus straw. This sounds you can hear, yeah, it is a good layer of straw. But working with straw is very uncomfortable. I'm really fed up of working with straw. I'm not cursing it. I mean, I love the straw and it's very useful, but as in the same concept of irrigation or any kind of fertilizer, we have to reduce it over time. So in order to really be like a syntropic, we need to use them as a first push, and then we have tried to make our system to work and to function by its own dynamics. So what we're going to do here this spring is we'll take cuttings of these aromatics and we'll also add, I mean, on the other side.
So on the outside, close to the path.
Yeah, I don't know how you will describe this to your listeners, but our idea is really to have as if we have a line of small bushes, and in the middle of these lines we'll have our vegetables.
So imagine an 80 centimeter bed where on the side, when you start from left or right, doesn't really matter, is a line of aromatics, then a line of vegetables, then another line of aromatics, perennials, just like the other side, and then another line of vegetables, and another one of aromatics, and then you get to the other food path. So very dense, everything alive, everything pumping, exudates all the time. Very intense, but intense production, but at the same time not so intense because all the aromatics, of course, you can eat, you can fry, you can use them, but they're mostly the workhorses of the system providing the biomass. And the vegetables are completely surrounded by life, basically.
Yeah, so what we'll try to do, what we'll do is to reproduce what we do with our trees. I mean, when we prune emergence trees to bring biomass or induce the flowering and the fructification of our medium layer or canopy layer fruits or low layer, we'll do this dynamics just in a very, as a miniature, using aromatic. Imagine if aromatics are trees, and then we're just pruning them and using all the biomass they produce to kind of but creating a disturbance that will boost a new growth with the seasonal plants in it. So
because that's a fundamental piece as well, right? The disturbance,
yes.
The pruning, not just because you like to prune, but because it's absolutely essential to this.
It is the pulse that will give a new boost of really growth. I mean, Ernest Gutsch, that is the creator of this approach.
I'm laughing because it took us 20 minutes. That's actually pretty good before we. But the disturbance piece and how much of a fundamental shift that is from our normal narrative, I think many people underestimate. Like the disturbance is, when done well, fundamental.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of it. We can't not do it. if we want to produce something. I mean, as Ernest says, I mean, a forest is not a museum. Museum, to say, it's not something that it just stays there. It has dynamics. And animals did this dynamic. The megafauna did the dynamics in a forest.
They did the pruning all the way up.
Yes, they did the pruning. And now we don't. I mean, we don't have the megafauna, and we can do this ourselves. And Ernest did a lot of very interesting researches, and some of the trees that he researched, the trees that he uses for pruning, they produce up to 5 times more biomass compared to the unpruned ones. Pruning for biomass, I'm not talking about pruning like a technical pruning for fruit trees production. I'm not talking about this kind of pruning, although they are part of it as well, but I'm talking about that type of pruning that we use to induce biomass production, to induce
like with the sage,
like the growth posts, like bring back the system to not bring back to the way it was before, but to use that accumulated biomass to give a new push forward. Really like a posting system. I mean, the system accumulates biomass, we prune, and it gives a boost of growth for the next group of plants. So overall, the idea here, which I think is important, it is the novelty that we're bringing to this place, is that although this is a vegetable-driven design, we have only, I would say, 20% of this area will be devoted to like a seasonal plants, to annual plants. The rest is absolutely perennial. So we are having 80% perennial plants that will not only produce by themselves because we have fruit trees and etc., but we have also, I mean, they will also support 20% of seasonal.
Is that deliberate, 80-20? Is that deliberately chosen, like the 80-20?
No, it's
but
it's
50-50
just
is probably too much, like because.
No, it could be. It's just it is a choice. I mean, here we are doing like this because we can't afford actually to plow this place every year. So we need to have, I mean, a very little like soil disturbance, as little as possible, because we just can't. I mean, we can't use a lot of water. So if we want to have vegetables in this place in a, I would say, ethical way or responsible way, I would say, we need to come up with new solutions. I know, and I hope we won't need the straw anymore, so it will be less volume of the straw here. And I want to find a way, even works line in a more mechanized and elegant way. I mean, we can do it. It's not, I mean, the technology is not inexistent, but we need to just adapt. So we keep working just this small, I would say 20 centimeters wide line where we'll place our vegetables. We'll find a way to do it mechanized so we can do this operation in an elegant and as little as possible soil disturbance.
And you bring up the role or potential role of technology and mechanization. In the last years here, have you seen, like, has that, because I think often it becomes, it's amazing, syntropic agroforestry, if we only had the machines, or if we only X, Y, Z. How has that conversation changed over the last years? Have you seen more machinery makers visit? Have you seen, is it starting to bubble also there, or are we still at the beginning?
I wish I had a good answer to that, but we are still struggling. Yeah,
we need more smart machine makers to get bitten by the syntropic bug.
No, absolutely. And not, I wouldn't say just, I mean, to use the term syntropic because it, I don't want people to perceive, to perceive it as a kind of a brand, because it is not. It's just like a way of interpreting natural ecosystems and how we can include our crops in it, in the dynamics of the forest. And I think that was the genius approach that Ernest brought, not only in terms of techniques, but also in terms of the vision and the ecological relationships. I mean, bringing the succession, bringing the diversity and the complexity of the diversity, including the trees, and not only the trees, but in succession, like a succeeding consortia of trees, that brings a lot to the table. And bringing this a lot to the table in terms of complexity also brings very big challenges to our technological front.
But it's fascinating to realize how big of a step that is, even from quote-unquote relatively traditional agroforestry of integrating one type of tree into a field, and just like this is almost going from 2D to 3 or 4D. Like it's seeing a space completely different, and that transformation over time and the succession will dictate almost everything. But of course we don't have the machines adapted to it. Doesn't mean they cannot be there. Like it's definitely fixable. It's just the question of when and how.
Yes, as we keep saying, the problem is not the lack of technology. The problem is that people who could do that, they don't know the questions we have, and they haven't so far internalized the questions that we're trying to solve. And technology always is not something that works on itself, but it fills a purpose and is trying to answer to some questions our society, I would say, imposes. And that's why we do this work, because we do this work to be visible. We have to make it work, although I would use the word compete, I mean, with the brackets here.
He's doing air brackets.
Air brackets with the traditional model in terms of profit and stuff, because it's more intense, it's more work at the beginning. But we hope that we can show, and we are showing it, that it works. It produces, it saves water, it improves the soil without the use of external fertilizers. All the fronts it brings benefits. From the climatic perspective, if we think about like a biotic pump, if you think about the role of the trees with the atmosphere and the relationship with the atmosphere, and if we think about the soil, if we think about that we're adding a lot of perennial plants in the system and perennial trees that we now know how beneficial they are and the role they play ecologically. So, but we don't have like a machine that can prune trees in the different layers. Well, maybe in the future with the AI, with the drones, with all the automation, I think it will come from that universe.
Probably because, I mean, if technology is an expression of the questions we ask, and we haven't asked these questions consistently or to the right people, then once that happens, then brilliant minds. What we see with, let's say, the bigger tent of regenerative agriculture in general, what's been most fascinating with the podcast is seeing very, very smart people that have been working elsewhere in other sectors of non-food and ag, or even food and ag. Once they get bitten by the soil bug or they go down a rabbit hole, they can't stop. Like they start absorbing. We had a friend here actually not so long ago. Well, they start absorbing books, they start visiting farms, and they naturally will start building things. It could be machinery, it could be brands, could be education, but they go down the rabbit hole and will start doing things that will be beneficial for farmers. We need way more people to be worried about soil and to start asking those questions, because they will start making the machines or making whatever we will need. We don't even know yet.
I totally agree.
At the moment it's 2% or whatever it is, and it's just
the type of agriculture we do as a humankind is a decision that the civilization does. But most of these people are actually not deciding, they're deciding as consumers, but they don't participate in any other part of this process. So I totally believe in that as well. That's why we also, everything that we try to do, and not only us, but our colleagues that work around the world in this kind of approach, is also to communicate, because that's how we bring people on board and we find allies to work in other fronts with public policies, with machines, with training, with whatever it takes to start changing or addressing the most urgent questions when it comes to agriculture.
And a few of those urgent questions are around succession and perennialization, and words that I don't think hear in any policy document ever. You just had a full school class, I think, of 14-year-olds on the farm as well. And soil quality and runoff, and those, we just don't talk about it nearly enough. Imagine if we do. We since walked to the first field, that's why we hear a bit more car noises, even though it's a Saturday afternoon and it's relatively quiet. And this is very pretty, but also very impressive, because I remember walking here when there was nothing. And that's only 2 years and 2-3 months ago, 4 months maybe. And I see some trees that are reaching, 4-5 meters?
Yeah,
This
5.
tallest? 5 plus?
Yeah, we'll prune, 5 plus.
And so what are we, il giardino, as you call it, the garden, What are we looking at here for people that are walking somewhere, listening, or maybe cooking or painting, whatever you might be doing, driving?
Well, here was our first design. Is a little bit different from the other one, but it's one year and 2 months ahead of the other one. So I hope that one that we just saw, I mean, at least the tree lines will look like this in 1 year. You have to come back to see. So here we have more this landscape design for like a productive garden, because this is a smaller area. I mean, planted here we have like 1,500, and we're gonna expand the rest of the line, so it's gonna be like 2,000 square meters, which is kind of not uncommon piece of backyard some people have here in this region. So our idea was to revisit the functionality and the use of these spaces and to give new meaning to it in terms of like a more intense food production. Not to make beautiful gardens so people can walk and smell flowers, which are nice as well. They're also here, these flowers you can smell, but also for production. So when we started, we decided to do 6 lines. Now we expanded another 2 lines, and we did like a different design. You can see like one of the first posts on our Instagram. Now they're really are hidden by the plants, but we worked here in nests. So we have one nest, like a round nest, roughly with like 1.2 meters in diameter, and with a fruit tree in the center of this nest, and they are 3 meters apart. And we have like a little connection between them where we planted emergent trees. And as I said, in the center of this nest we add like a fruit tree. So here we have almost 70 nests, so almost 70 fruit trees. And as we described before, we have all the aromatics, all the bushes and everything else composing the Consortia, but in a more advanced way. I mean, they're almost like 3 years now. So they have grown so well. I mean, you see and I started pruning this yesterday. I will continue. I did up to this line. Now I have to continue the other side. So it's been very pleasant already to finish, I mean, to already give the form of the fruit trees. We're still doing the formation pruning to them, but I mean, the poplars and the eucalypt, it's so nice because they are finally reaching their strata. I mean, they will be above all the fruit trees. I mean, really making that extra layer that people couldn't see at the beginning because they were all kind of growing together. But now people, when they come, they see, okay, now I understand. And we are, as we say, the translation maybe is not the same, but in Brazil we say that we are going to raise the skirt of this poplar and the eucalypt, that we are taking the lower branches. Mm-hmm. So the fruit trees that are close by, they occupy that space, and those emergent trees, they will open their crown really up there in their layer, in the emergent layer. So underneath, the other trees will just be able and have space to express themselves. And we'll start doing some pruning. We are doing already some pruning in the corbezzolo, which is the strawberry tree that will be under some of the fruit trees. And so it's another stage. And I'm loving to play with this stage because it's when we have a lot of biomass production. It is the moment when we don't regret planting too much because we have things to prune now. And so hopefully we will really, I mean, this straw will hopefully we won't need to add any other straw because the place is already able to produce its own biomass to keep the soil covered all the time. And in the same way as we just described from another area, here we add vegetables at the beginning together with this aromatics, with everything. In the first year, we only irrigated this area 8 times, so it was an amazing result. I mean, here, normally people from when spring comes, normally you have to irrigate almost every day or every other day. And here, we just did it 8 times during the peak of the summer, I mean, the hottest weeks. And even though we produced lots of tomatoes and eggplants and zucchini, so...
You took a lot of water out and not added a lot of water, basically.
Yes, that is one of the advantages of
and this is anybody, let's say if you have this kind of backyard or close to on your farm or plot of land, this is very manageable to to do by hand. This is very manageable to do by eye. This is not, it's intensive to start. But as you said, once it gets going and you're saying this summer, this field particularly will explode, then it produces just so much. As long as you keep pruning and planting and harvesting, you're fine.
This size, I talked to Diana, it is a fantastic retirement plan because...
More than you can eat.
Yeah, it's much more than we can eat, and it's a fantastic playground, and you don't get stressed with hectares and hectares of land and your responsibility. We still can have some chicken here if we want some eggs, and so it is a good space, and it is a lot of fun. And it's a lot of diversity. We have here like 30 plus species, considering all the aromatics, bushes, and many of them are eatable. And now we are here standing in front of the lines that we did during a workshop in September. Following the same design, we'll still add the straw here. We are concluding the winter vegetable harvest, and they're just like at the end of their cycle. But here we can already see the logics of it. For example, we harvested, or still finishing to harvest, this cavolonero, this kind of this brassica, and but we have, here we can't see because it's a deciduous tree, but we have a leguminous tree here that will take over the space. And here is Amelias Darak that will also take this place.
At the moment, it's just a stick. Yeah.
The moment it's just a stick.
Just to be a bit blunt. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have this that we are trying. This is an Australian. It's called, they're called flame tree. I'm planting the first time to see how it behaves. You always like to try different trees.
You never know. Yeah.
And so we have this, a collection of perennial and annual plants, like the vegetables that we harvested. Because now these aromatics, they will explode, they will grow a lot. And we have the option to prune them and have another cycle of vegetables, like the summer spring vegetables. We can add our tomatoes, our melanzane, our...
So when you want it, so basically just to give a bit of context, they will cover most of this nest. Mm-hmm. When you want to plant, you basically cut them back, prune them, leave all of it there, obviously, and plant in a tiny bit of uncovered place. You plant a tomato, etc., instead of a perfectly, quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes again.
And just to conclude, and people say, but it's a lot of work. It's just instead of bringing your cultivator and or your tractor to plow in the field and to dig a hole to break compaction and adding your fertilizer and adding everything else, we prune. We don't kill any plant, we just prune them.
And you plant your fertilizer and you plant your anti-compaction. Exactly. And you plant, which is a lot of work at the beginning, but then it's maintenance, cutting, reducing a bit and planting in a bed that is already ready for a tomato or an eggplant. Yes. Or if you don't want, you skip a year, perfectly fine. The aromatics will love it. You still have to prune them because they will love the extra pulse, but it doesn't change.
And we have the pleasure of seeing a place that is improving year after year.
That's not to be underestimated, Felipe. That's like, the town is called Depressa, not for that reason, but it's, let's say, as many agriculture regions, this is, from an agriculture perspective, a struggling place. The olives are dying. The employment in agriculture, unless it's super intensive, is just very, very difficult. And to see a place that actually improves without adding a whole lot, adding time and labor and sweat, but without adding whatever chemical, fertilizer, NPKs, etc., and seeing it increase and improve every year is not to be that must do something to your mood. Yeah,
but it is because it is a long-term investment, and some people they don't want to see.
This is not so long.
I agree. But people sometimes when we compare to conventional agriculture, sometimes like the spreadsheet and the business plan, it goes to 5 years, it goes to, like a short term or even like a 2-year thing. We tend to think it's too much, but we say that most of the work we do in the first year we'll never do again. It is a one-time, a one-time investment.
It's and if you can do 5 times the biomass, and I've heard you share stories as well on timber and in shaving of years of timber trees to be ready. That's just our lack of understanding and putting it properly in a spreadsheet. That's not because the numbers are not there. It's like really, because if you do timberland investment, it's 30 plus years. Like it's like there is a group of people that is used to those long terms. They're just not used to this yet. And also vegetables, if you're planning to do that at least 5 to 10 years, you put a lot of effort in like industrial scale extractive vegetable production. There's a lot of preparation, a lot of money that actually goes in. The issue is it's put in a way where the asset doesn't improve, but actually just degrades, which means every year you have to do something more. This is the fascinating piece, like that I think most number-minded people or economically minded or financial minded, let's say, minded people still have to wrap their head around that agriculture could be an asset or a place that improves because of management, not like it's not a building that you have to maintain. This is you maintain, but it gets better over time. And we have completely been unable to capture that in numbers. And we see some very smart people trying to do that and capitalizing on that and saying, look, I see this is, you can harvest while improving a field. Like what is, and maybe we don't have the language yet, or we don't know how to value land that has been improved, or we don't know, et cetera, but the gap is there. Like because of management, you can improve your field and your asset. Like that's, you don't have to be an Excel genius to figure out that makes sense. But yeah, so it's that we just have to catch up to that. I think it's of course, if you make a 2-year plan, but most things don't make sense. Solar panels don't make sense in 2 years. Like there are many things that this. Like, do you? Sorry.
No. It's no, really. I totally. Of course, I agree, and we feel it.
But it has to fit in a spreadsheet if you want to raise. Yeah.
Subtle, like pleasures as well to see. We are designed to enjoy, like when we see a place that is improving. We have this biophilia, which is, I guess, is more complex than the concept of biophilia. But we really feel a pleasure when we start working with complexity of life and life forms, and we see year after year, like the place prospering.
Could it be one of the reasons because most people are not in those circumstances of so much depression? Like we see a lot of things going backwards, even though a lot of things are improving, many other things are not. But I don't think many people have the pleasure of seeing a natural system getting better.
Well, I'm not an expert. I mean, I'm not a professional in that, but I can only speak for myself. And my perception is in regular, like in conventional agriculture, each year, like after the harvest, the place gets a little bit worse than it was before. And in the first year, you added, 1 ton of some inputs, and the next year you have to add a 1.2, and then next year. So it's this coming back, this always taking a step back to move forward. It's, I don't know how to put it, but it kills the spirit of a farmer because we don't see it moving ahead. Whereas, for example, here, I mean, you remember, I mean, we were just seeing some oak trees that we planted together with poplar. Here we can see how it gets after almost 3 years. So
from seed.
I mean, from seed. I mean, we have a poplar now that is, I mean, because I pruned, so it's like a 2.2 meters. And we have like an oak tree that is, 70, 80 centimeters tall. It's, I mean, and yes,
it shouldn't grow this fast.
In the afternoon, I was here, and I mean, just seeing that, and everything is waking up, starting to wake up now because the spring in the horizon. So it brings another layer of enchantment with nature, with its capacity, and not only because it's beautiful, because it's fantastic, because it's the most astonishing technology we can possibly see, but also we see the potential that all this can be. Before we started here, we did soil analysis. And I would just quote the organic matter in the soil. Here, overall, we had between 0.3 and 0.1. I mean, it's really almost nothing. This place, this giardino here, is now, it's 1.9. And we don't add fertilizer. We add a little bit of simple soil at the beginning, but really a dust compared to
cannot be that.
Yes, conventional recommendation. It's really that concept of a push to the plants. For example, now we see the only old trees that there was in this place. There were 6 citrus trees that were suffering here when we arrived, and I am following their development with a lot of curiosity, because I mean, how will they react without fertilizers, without any external input? And year after year, they are improving. I mean, this year, for example, I mean, the first year we just have one tangerine that produced, not very good. And this year we had another three citrus that started producing, and they are old trees. I mean, they were just not producing. And so I give jumps of happiness. I mean, it's really nice to see that.
And then let's walk to your new playground.
Okay, do you want to go to the frutteto or the new olive tree?
No, I would say I would go to the new olive tree. What do you prefer, actually? You wanna...
Oh, but have you been there in the frutteto? I mean that.
The one, yeah. But, I mean, we can pass by. Let's do both if you.
Okay, let's walk here.
Feel like it.
Because these are, I think these next two areas that we'll see, they belong to a different objective, because they are more like a bigger scale designs. The two that we spent, I don't know, almost an hour talking about, we were in two
human scale.
Yeah, human scale, small scale designs, and now we are heading to a 1 hectare plot.
We're crossing a field where there are a few olive trees still, like there are a few lines of olive trees a bit to our right. To our left, there's nothing except one tree. Very poor soils. I mean, stuff is growing, but...
Yeah, but you see just a small herbs.
Yeah.
I mean, if we were to rely on this biomass production to start a new system, after a rainy season or during a rainy season, we see that the place just doesn't produce enough. Yeah, it's basically the calendula that grows up to 20 centimeters, starts flowering. I love calendula, I love the smell, and I have nothing against the calendula, but it's not enough to set up a system to host plants that will feed us or to feed large animals.
It would take too long. Yeah.
Yes.
So what are we looking at here? A lot of lines, a lot of straw, and in between space, which is interesting. A lot of trees planted.
Yeah, here we had like a traditional olive grove that olives 10 by 10 planted, which means like 100 trees per hectare. And we decided to do lines, 3 lines between these olives, and we connect these olives diagonally. It's going to be hard to explain this, but I invite you to watch on our Instagram. And because we did that to make the lines, to orient the lines north-south, so we have an even distribution of light both sides. And by doing this, we have one line with the olives every almost 13 meters. And between these olives, that now they are also roughly 13 meters apart, we added 3 fruit trees, 1 emergent and other 2 that are lower layers. And since here is a bigger area, we organized a little bit more to facilitate harvest. So we have groups of trees of the same fruit trees in the line. So if we come with a vehicle, and there is space here to come with a vehicle, light vehicle of course, to help with the harvest and even to help with the pruning. And so we have 3 fruit lines between the olives. And of course, we have all the layers underneath. The same scheme
sage
of the rest.
Present.
Sage, rosemary and poplar. And then also the novelty that we brought, because 13 meters would be too far apart to have these olive lines. And then we decided... Sorry?
Why is that?
Because then we have a huge strip with nothing, because we can't have here, it's very hard to find, we can't have cover crops here. Mm-hmm. We can, but just for winter. We can't have perennial cover crops as we do in Brazil, for example, that we can have grasses and everything, but it's still 30 meters.
Because it would die in the summer, basically.
Yeah, here it just, it dries in the summer, but also it's a big area without trees, without stratification. So we decided to add another line in the middle that we are calling the evergreen line. We favored evergreen plants in the middle to fill a series of purposes. One is the biomass production, We want more biomass being produced in this area. The other one is to make a perennial green wall to protect, to slow down wind. When we have this climate change, there is a lot of energy in the atmosphere. So the winds here are very strong, and sometimes the olives being the only productive and evergreen tree, it takes all the hit alone. I mean, there is no other, here we have this luxury of having this bosqueto, this small pinus plantation in the back, but normally all the areas here are very exposed. So the wind is very strong and very fast. So we are doing this to have like a windbreaks. Every 30 meters we have a windbreak that will protect the production trees, the olives during the winter, and will produce a lot of biomass for us. And we plant a lot of artichokes, and of course, to make it.
Why not? And that's, I think, another one of, we keep repeating those concepts of competition. Like many people would see here, like, yeah, but wouldn't it compete? And we covered that in length in the first conversation we recorded. And I think we even titled the podcast, When in Doubt, Plant More Trees, or plant more in general, because you can plant water if they are fine, if they are not stressed, etc. Like but that whole idea of there's a finite amount of space, there's a finite amount of water and nutrients, so we need to reduce because we only want the olive to grow, or we only want the artichoke, etc., etc. And here we need biomass, we need life, we need root exudates, we need way more, so we overplant to all systems, in all models this is overplanting, but it works really, really well.
Yeah, because it is, and that's one very nice thing that Ernest's interpretation brought, because we can survive and we can live really well in our agricultural life without really using concepts of competition. Because it's actually not. It is what we avoid is the overposition of plants, overposition of functions, which means we don't plant like two species that belong to the same strata and to the same successional step.
Next to each other.
No. Yeah, because then they will say, okay, it's either you or me. It's okay, it's not it's a competition, they're fighting. No, it's just an overposition of function, as it says. And so what we try, that's why it requires knowledge and experience, because we have to organize our designs in a way that it won't happen. So it's really like a 4D puzzle. So we try to make the consortia of plants, the consortia of stratified multi-layer plants to succeed one another, really complementing each other, not one tied and taking the space of another, but quite the opposite, one helping and fitting together in the space and in time with each other. And so when we do that, that's how the system works, and that's how, as Ernest says, water is planted, and that's how we have the maximization of photosynthesis and everything that results from that, which is the biomass production, the more roots exudates and more soil protection, because we have more biomass and we have more things to prune and we cover the soil. And by having all that, we have the formation of soil aggregates. And by having the formation of soil aggregates, we can retain more water, we can host more soil organisms that stay here during the whole year, not only in during the rainy season. So it's
but that level of knowledge and understanding really the function of plants at this moment and in time going forward. Like when you see people coming here, like how long does it take for this specific context? Because you have to every time have to rediscover that basically wherever you go. And of course with all the knowledge you have from before, so it goes much faster. But like this is that to have the level of knowledge to be able to design and then maintain and prune and actually not maintain, like actually to excel the evolution of a system. Does it take years, decades? What do you see? Of course, it depends on people. What do you see? Like how? Because it sounds, for somebody who was born next to the zoo in the Netherlands, in the city center, it sounds you have to know what you're doing, because otherwise you prune wrong or you plant wrong. How complex is it to wrap your head around? Have you noticed or seen?
Yeah, as you said, depends on people, on their background, and believe it or not, sometimes when people come from like conventional agriculture background, it becomes more difficult because we have to undo some of the paradigms to start thinking in a different way. But nonetheless, we can't escape practice, and I say we never stop learning because it is a long-term system, and we are always learning something new. But what I think it shouldn't be neglected is the principles of it. So we see a lot people attend a workshop, they see how things are organized and they try to copy and paste, that system. And then after 2-3 years, they enter in crisis because they don't know how to manage, or they don't know how to correct in case there is a mistake, and there are always mistakes. And so it becomes trickier for the decision making. And that's why studying is, of course, it is fundamental. And now there is more with YouTube, with a lot of other very skilled and knowledgeable farmers sharing knowledge. And we have Diana making our propaganda here. We wrote a book about this. Really focused on the principles, on this, I wouldn't say only the philosophy, but also, as we say, the toolbox on how to think about these systems. And another friend like Fernando in Brazil also wrote a very nice book, more technical. And so, the information is out there, and also people need to practice. Because one thing that we keep saying, we learn with the tip of our fingers. So we need to do it. We need to do it. It's not something that we'll learn at university and only watching YouTube videos. No, we have to have our aha moments by doing.
In a couple of years, let's say, in a place, if you are observing well enough, you should be able to grasp most of it.
Yes, we always
it's not decades. It's not decades of work.
Yeah, no, it always improves. Oh, let's see here. This is the first. I was curious to see. 2 years, like the citrus.
2 years, first fruit after 2 years, and I'm standing next to eucalyptus that just went to 3-4 meters and has part of a tree that's bigger than my hand. And this is planted when?
This was after the Giardino. It was in...
so less than 2 years?
It wasn't...
2 years?
Yes, it's precisely 2 years. A little bit less than 2 years, actually, because it was in March, May...
has been pruned?
No, March, April. No, not yet, just
underneath,
here.
Yeah.
But this year, very soon we'll start to top it. So we'll raise the skirt, we'll cut the side branches and we'll let it really open the crown up there. And so the Ciliegio, here the cherry tree will also let it open the crown a little bit under the eucalypt crown. The
cherry is already a meter taller than you.
Yeah? Yes. And we want the cherry, for example, to respect its layer, because it likes to be in the height, not... Mm-hmm. One of the unfortunate things here in the Mediterranean, and not here only in the Mediterranean, but all these trees, we treat them as
bushes.
As bushes.
Yeah.
And some trees, they want to go to the canopy layer, and some want to go to the emergent layer, but we don't allow them. And that's why it's difficult to see a stratified, a layered system, because we want all the plants to be within the reach of our hand. And that is another technological a challenge as well, because I understand, it's much easier to pick a fruit when you just walk in and it's at your range.
Yeah.
But we can't have both. We can't have like a soil improvement and a multi-layer design if we want all the trees to belong to the same layer.
And cooling and all the atmospheric benefits of the layer, the stratification. So we need either like a flying, see a beautiful bird of prey, by the way, on one of the olive trees. Either a drone where we sit on and then we fly through the tree lanes, or automatic picking, or some. I know you talked about platforms, like light platforms that just move up and down where you're picking. This is all definitely solvable. Like we've done we drove a car on the moon. So
Yes.
but yeah, the demand or the questions we've asked to the machine building industry or the machine building industry hasn't paid enough attention yet to the fundamental questions here. But when that happens, yeah, you will see a lot of wacky designs, but maybe very useful ones.
I hope the moment is now, because I mean all this technologies is really coming and they're amazing, and they can really do a very useful service. So let's hope.
And do you see, before we get to your the last piece of this walk, I called it your playground, but do you see a role also in the planning for technology, for AI to either make it simpler for people to understand, or even do combinations and things that even you and Ernest, etc., couldn't have come up with, because it's dealing with so much data and potential. Like, actually, what if you do the design like this, and what if you use this consortium in that way, or what? Like, do you see a role for software there? As well. I mean, we talked a lot about hardware, but the software side of things.
I do see it. I do see because it is amazing how it processes information. I don't know how, but I think like a trained AI, a trained software, trained app that can process this amount of information that we give input, for example, of all the strata, the climate models. Yes, input everything, and to work with this, as Antonio Nobre, I mean the scientist, Brazilian scientist who we work with and we admire a lot. He says that it's not about AI. It looks like a fungi that is kind of digesting all the information that is just sitting on the internet that we cannot process because it's just too much. It's been piling up for decades now, and we can't process all that information. And maybe like the AI will be analogous of a fungal community that can just digest all that information and make it more available to us in a comprehensive and coherent way. So yes, I think, I don't know still how. I mean, of course, I'm very suspicious still, and I try to be optimistic that all the tools can be positive if we have the good intention of making it positive. Yeah, here we are in the Oliveto. Here's the area where we see old olive trees, roughly 30 to 50-year-old olive trees.
Which is not old for olives, but they look like they're suffering, let's say. That's for sure.
Yeah, they were attacked by the disease, and so they are kind of, they're still alive, but not as productive as, I mean, everybody wanted. But we are making an effort to keep them alive. And we are bringing a new design to compose this. I mean, we don't want to take them down, but we want to include them in new systems. And this area, which is in total is 3.6 hectares, and we are starting now to do 1 hectare that we'll do this season. And we did, I mean, here we have two designs. We did the first one very late, almost, I mean, touching summer, because I wanted to start here. We added more olives in the olive lines, and in the middle we added 2 lines with acero campestre, I don't know how to say in English, and wild almonds that we're trying some experiments with grapes growing on trees, just for really experiment, I mean just for fun, for research. And but the bigger design was actually, I thank Ernest a lot for that, because
he pushed you, huh?
Yes, he was saying to me Felipe, courage, do this way, it will work.
Because what were you planning to do here? Let's take it from the less courageous.
I was actually planning something else. I mean, I liked the other design as well, but it would be more dense with other 2 lines here, and I would do the olives in I would say in quincuncio. It's one here, another here, another. Mm-hmm. So they would complement it. They would almost touch each other, and it would look like more forest, and also with the fruit trees, with the pecan nuts in the middle. But I must admit that when we think about more disruptive possibilities, and what Ernest discussed with me and what he proposed, it makes more sense because this working, it will be a bigger transformation. So what we have here, which might sound very, very bold for most of people, that we are planting every almost 70 centimeters. Actually here we put 75, so we can fit like between the olives, we can fit 16 new olives between like
Speaking of dense,
existing olives. So we have really a hedgerow of olives. I mean, but it is not the same as the intensive or super intensive.
I can hear people listening.
Me too.
This is not super. It is super intensive, but not the super intensive olives that you see in Spain, and unfortunately starting to pop up in other places. Hedgerows where big machinery, heavy machinery travels over. If you want to just Google super intensive olive groves, and you will find some examples. You see big machinery, a lot of chemical inputs, desert underneath basically. And one of the reasons, I mean, we're recording this beginning of 2024, while olive oil prices have never been higher, I think, or at least one of the highest moments ever, is because the Spanish region of Andalusia collapsed, I think, 2 years in a row. The super high intensive didn't produce or produced a lot less because of a huge mix of reasons, but mostly very intensive, fragile system that was hit by a late frost or a drought, heat at the wrong moment, and sent prices through the roof. So this is intensive, but without all the machinery, without all the input, without all the negative externality.
No, and a very different, absolutely different logics, and I will explain. I mean,
it's a lot of trees in the line.
It is a lot of trees, but they will behave in a very different way, because the olives we have, it's the variety is the Cellina di Nardò, which is like a more of a tall variety. And we want to keep using this variety because the oil is absolutely amazing. And actually we planted here wild olives by seed. I mean, they were planted by seed, and we'll graft them here with the Cellina. But the thing is, first off, this intensive and super intensive models, they use very specific varieties, and they keep them low, so the machines can come almost over it like a coffee harvest and just sweep it and do the harvest. And here we won't do this. I mean, here first off, the idea is to make it to its layer, which is a canopy layer. So we let them go up, and it will do like a bifurcation as
like a Y. It will open up two layers, two sides, to the left and the right of the line.
And so they will cover this canopy layer, and underneath we still have other plants, I mean, between them, because we have 70 centimeters, so we'll have rosemaries, and we are having we'll plant at the beginning also some alfalfa to cover the soil, and we might even add we can add some vegetables and stuff at the beginning. The idea is that we'll really cover the soil. I mean,
but no other trees.
Plants. No other trees, because I mean, pretty soon we just can't have it. Mm-hmm. It's because it will be really dense. But then we have, okay, stick with me, because then we have another olive line 12 meters apart, and then we'll add another line in the middle. So 6 meters, we'll have another line. So this line will add the other layers. So whereas the olive line will have the canopy layer, and we'll try to push it to 50% of taking the plot as a whole, they will respond to 50% of the coverage. We'll push to 50% because normally they are 40%, but we'll push it to 50%.
Meaning closing 50% of the surface above, of course, because we're talking high.
Yeah, we're talking about almost like a horizontal section. It will respond to 50% of the photosynthesis.
When you say we will push it, that's going to be pruning management to push it beyond what you normally would do with an olive, which is 40%.
And here in the middle, we'll add, for example, a consortia with figs, with limes, lemons, and we can add some mulberries, and we have some emergent trees as well. So the other layers will be here. And in the interlines, we'll keep working on the interlines in order to establish a good system and good perennial plants. I mean, including all the perennial bushes that can grow and stand the summer here in the Mediterranean. And we'll try to do it in a way that we can, I wouldn't say rotate, but we can like cut and mulch and they regrow without, of course, having to plow it every year. So the idea here is going to be a stratified system. I mean, what we see from above is really a hedgerow, but together with a lot of strata and diversity of plants. So it's not a monoculture and it's not a monolayer of plants. So I'm very excited about this and hoping it will bring a new ways of seeing an olive grove and the form of an olive tree.
What made you get convinced by Ernest to go for it?
It's going to be easier to implement. It's going to be less work, and I might say even less complex to establish. It makes a lot of sense. And so the design that I was doing, it wouldn't give an easy answer to, for example, neighbors and people that come here. I mean, I'm sure it would be very nice and and hopefully very productive as well, but it would still look more complex. So this is, I think, more comprehensive. This is easy to understand. If people would be here, they would see that it's not something, that we need to explain a lot. It is kind of
it would be easier for people to grasp and
yes.
then maybe implement on their fields, and because there is a huge hunger here or need for new olive systems.
It is easier to mechanize as well. I mean, here, we couldn't because we are keeping the old olives, so we cannot just come with a tractor and make our beds. I mean, our first lines with a tractor because we just can't. But if we are starting from scratch, it would be much easier to do it because you just do and plant like one after another, and in the middle we add your 2-3 plant consortia, so it is easier. It is more comprehensive.
And thus potentially more disruptive because it might be implemented on way more hectares if this takes off. And harvesting, what do you... because one of the reasons the ultra or super intensive, etc. took off was because of harvesting, because of quote-unquote easiness, traveling over the mechanization of that, because of the traditional ways of harvesting take a lot of hands, and there's a lot of slave labor involved in that as well. So there are a lot of issues with harvesting in general, and mechanization took one direction and might have another direction here. What do you envision? Because you have 6 meters, so you have space. You have a layer, you told already, like it's going to be perennial, but it's going to be cut, mulched. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be in the way of nets, potentially. What do you see as harvesting options?
Well, at the beginning we have to do with nets. We have no other option. I mean, doing as people do here with the stall varieties. We don't have any other disruptive technology to do that, and definitely we don't want the super intensive way of doing it. So this is we'll do like that. I mean, we are at 3.6 hectare. We'll manage to do it in this way, but of course it would be nice in the future if technology looked at it to find more disruptive ways of harvesting, and I'm sure it will come. It will come. I can really see like a small automated vehicles just doing the harvest, but of course this is I don't want
future speak.
Be like a sci-fi.
I've seen the first. For sure, I talked about it somewhere in an episode. The first a drone in an apple orchard, or not actually. I mean, a vehicle that drives by itself with 2 drones attached to it, and then going up, identifying the apple. With a little sucking mechanism, taking it, like the ones that are ripe. Because in apple orchards, apparently 10-15% stays on the tree when it's the right season to harvest because of lack of hands to do it. And then so it sucked the ripe ones and dropped it then already sorted into the device. So if we can do that, I'm not saying we're going to suck one olive at a time because that sounds, but there will be smart people figuring this out.
And one thing that is important to note is also because we want to use these local varieties because they are juice of that what has been created here in the Salento. So I mean, here we have very special oils, And of course, it's not the same as the super intensive. We have the Lecchino, we have the Favolosa. So we have those varieties that were bred to attend this demand of the super intensive. But here, the type and the quality of oil that we are targeting is completely different. I mean, it's a completely different story. So that's why also even if we wanted, we couldn't use these machines that exist because the trees, they behave in a different way.
Which means we have to adapt the machines or come up with machinery that can adapt. I think we have made a full circle and are back at the entry road. I want to thank you so much for sharing yet again. And for me, absolutely fascinating. I hope for whoever listens as well. We link a lot of things below in the show notes or in the description. And I would urge you to follow this farm on Instagram and all the other social channels to see visually the development as well. And I took you away from an afternoon or a few hours of pruning. So I'm sorry for that, but you will get back to that. I want to thank you so much for the walk and talk.
I thank you, and it's, as usual, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And it's wonderful. Anytime. I hope you come more and more. And not only you, the family, and to see how this place grows the same way we're watching, we are following your beautiful girls growing.
They definitely enjoy being here, yeah. That's and the flavors and the taste and eating directly off the land helps as well. So that's thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.